Could you please introduce yourself?
So, my name is Maeve McLynne. I work for Climate Action Network Europe. It's a network of over 120 organisations working on climate, energy, environment, development, all ranges. And my position, my post in the office is climate, finance and development. So I work mainly in the UNFCCC on the issue of climate finance, and I also outside the UNFCCC on sustainable development. We just launched a report today which is focused on fossil fuel subsidies in Europe and basically the 10 wealthiest EU member states by GDP, and the report is kind of aimed to do kind of a snapshot of the level of subsidies that exist across European member states and the EU in general. So it was to kind of identify these big figures that exist and kind of pinpoint them in a way that makes people understand the level of the problem, and also to kind of shed a light and make a comparison between these subsidies and climate finance. So shall I go right into saying?
Yeah, I would like to ask on your recommendation on phasing out fossil fuels subsidized within the European Union.
Well, I think like the European Union, it's like what we say in general, it needs to take a bit of a lead on this. The EU and developed countries need to be pushing much further in phasing out subsidies for fossil fuel industry, and like this is a key thing, is that they should be doing it immediately. Like all EU member states should be doing it as soon as possible, and one of our key recommendations is that the EU should provide guidance to member states. It should provide a framework, a policy framework under which EU member states can work, and therefore take further lead on phasing out fossil fuels. So there's no excuse, or there's no way to hide behind certain obstacles or certain barriers from phasing out, so that member states can just get right into it.
You mentioned as well in your speech that there is no common framework on fossil fuels subsidized within the European Union, that they have diverse definitions and categories. What is the argument of this lack of transparency?
So basically, I think it comes down to how different countries choose to define what a fossil fuel subsidy is, and therefore one country can say that a certain fossil fuel subsidy is not inefficient and therefore doesn't need to be phased out, which some countries really do, and then other countries of course have different measurements as well to say, oh well, it is kind of inefficient and therefore should be phased out. So I think this lack of coherence between countries and between what the definition of an inefficient fossil fuel subsidy is part of the crux of the problem. And I think the point that we want to make is that all subsidies are inefficient and therefore all should be phased out, so that they can't hide behind this definitional challenge. So how you define it, still, of course, it's easy for us to say, but how you define it should always get to the point that it's both unsustainable environmentally, socially and economically, and therefore this should kind of lead the way to overcoming the definition and the categorization of subsidies.
And please tell me, how is industry reacting for these recommendations, reports?
I don't think they'll be very enthusiastic or positive about it, because it's putting further pressure on the real culprits of the problem, which is of course the industry, and then therefore taking away some of the political or hidden support that they may have through these policies. So again, it sheds light on the fact that they've been getting away with too much, and therefore governments can act now and not let them do that anymore. And I think it scares them a little bit, and the reception won't be very, very positive, but at the same time they need to adapt and they need to realise that their operations are having extremely terrible impacts. So I think they'll have a natural reaction.
Thank you for your time and for the speech. Thank you very much.
No problem.